Feels kind of cozy in here today. I don't know how, I hope it's cozy in your homes. So we're doing a half-day sitting on Saturday. Please come if you can. Please come in person if you can. Please come on Zoom if that's the way you can come. We will, we've just begun and we'll continue our study of bodhisattvas. I was thinking, I've been practicing, well, we've all been practicing our whole lives, but I've been more formally practicing the path of Zen for, I always measure it by my son because he was born at Green Gulch, over 40 years. Yikes. And the thing that I most have come to love, and I really sort of the center of what I want to embody and convey is bodhisattva practice. Nobody talked about bodhisattva. Nobody, I don't think anybody talked about bodhisattvas 40 years ago. And they've come forward more in this time, but then the question of what is that and how do we live it? What's that have to do with this era of climate crisis and all the craziness of how we're divided? And anyway, I don't need to go on. You all have a good idea about the world that we're in. Hey, bodhisattvas. So the root book we're using is Faces of Compassion. Faces of Compassion. It's an older book, although I looked online, there's a newer version out. It's by Taigen Dan Layton, Classic Bodhisattva Archetypes and Their Modern Expression. But the newer version also says that it's, I think it says it's a history of Mahayana Buddhism. And it does have a really nice introduction in it. And it has beautiful images of the different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Today, we're focusing on Shakyamuni Buddha. We're going to enter with Shakyamuni Buddha, and then we'll do Maitreya Buddha and Manjushri Bodhisattva and Jizo Kitsunagarbha Bodhisattva and Avalokiteshvara. And then I thought Dan doesn't have Tara either, but I thought we'd do some manifestations of Tara too. She's not exactly a Bodhisattva, but hey, we can. So it's okay. She fits. I used to co-teach a class called Bodhisattvas Are Us. And one of the things that we would do is bring different, you all have a different image of the Buddha. I'll just hold some up right here for the people on the screen. There's so, I mean, in case you haven't noticed, there's lots of different depictions of the Buddha from different cultures and across time. We have on our altar here I think it's a Burmese Buddha. I just read that the little cones, the Thai Buddhas and the Burmese Buddhas had, this one has a little cone on the top of his head. It's because there's a little flame of enlightenment up there. Maybe it just keeps him very warm. But what I especially love, you should come up later and look at this one. I just love the Nagas, and some of you have the Naga. The Naga is the snake thing. The Naga is the snake thing. The Naga is, so the Naga is, there's different stories about the Nagas, is that the Nagas are supposed to be keeping the treasures of the Buddha. They guard the treasures of the Buddha way down in the deep depths of the waters. But I also read just recently, in fact, last night or the other day when I was studying for some of this, I want to make sure I get it right. Taigen says, if I can't find it, I'll just say what I remember. is that it came forward in countries where there were snakes and they were afraid of snakes. And so having a snake protector, plus snakes were always, in so many cultures, I used to do more shamanistic practices. Snakes are very powerful. They're big medicine, but they're also, if you're out wandering around in the jungle, snakes can kill you. So having a snake protector is a pretty cool thing. And it's earth. It's the message is this is about earth. This isn't about transcending. This is about being here. So let's we all have Buddha nature. That's the teaching. Everything is Buddha nature. We all have Buddha nature. We did some of this on Tuesday. I'll do it again for now as a little review. Buddha nature is, each one of us is Buddha, and we're all waking up to be Buddha. So that's our practice, to wake up to be Buddha. That's the practice of a bodhisattva, to be here, just like Buddha did. Buddha saw, well, we know this, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. To wake up the Buddha in ourselves, and the practice of seeing each person as Buddha. You're Buddha. You're Ellen waking up to be Buddha Ellen. And Debbie. And Linda. I was sitting here in my stream of thought conscious. I don't know what goes through your mind when you're sitting. I've been thinking, oh, little computer's sitting on a zafu. I need to get something else for it to sit on. And I thought, wait a minute, the computer's sitting on a zafu. That is so everything's waking up to become itself. And it's like, oh, okay. So we all have Buddha nature, this potential. And our joyful effort in this lifetime is to use it, to activate it, to be used by it, to put it into practice in our daily lives. And where it arises, it said that the way you enter the path, the way the path enters us, the initial awakening of bodhicitta is you notice there's suffering. Notice the suffering of the world, which is, of course, that's what happened with the Buddha. The Buddha went out of this perfect pleasure palace where he'd been protected and noticed there was suffering. And once you notice there's suffering in the world, it changes you. And we all have our conditioned responses and our cultural responses. But when it really, Bodhi, the bodhisattva, bodhi is the state of being awake, and sattva is having the intention or the strength or the courage to just keep saying, yes, I will. Yes, I will. I want to wake up. I want to understand. I want to go to the very depths and the roots of suffering so that I can be free and all beings can be free. So in a certain way, then it becomes a faith practice, because how are you going to save all beings? That's impossible. But it's like, what else are you going to do? It's because otherwise, you're going to go stick your head in the sand, which we all do in one way or another. But once your heart really awakens, that's the good news and the bad news. It's like, uh-oh. And is it Mel Weissman said, what's enlightenment? Someone asked him, and maybe it was Suzuki Roshi, to see one thing all the way through. And Trungpa said, once you start something, once you start this path, you have to follow it all the way through. Not that you have to because it's a rule. It's because once you start to get it, it's like, what else are you going to do with your life? And then what is that? Because it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm going to be a Buddha, I'm going to be a Buddha. No more beer for me. No. I went out to celebrate my sister's birthday at Paradise Ridge Winery last night. It was really nice sitting out on the deck drinking wine and having pulled pork sandwiches and music, and that bodhisattva practice too. It's understanding what's this isn't a grim practice. In fact, it becomes more and more joyful and all inclusive, but you always know. You dedicate your joy to the whole world, and you also My sister's turning 70, my little sister, it's like, you also know that part of it too. All of it. It's always all there with you. So there are the great Buddha Bodhisattva archetypes that I just named. They're big. They are depicted. Someone said, "Oh, it'd be fun to go down to the Asian Museum of Art." They're there. If you go down to the Green Gulch of Zendo, they're there, and they have qualities. And as we study each of those, the question will always be: so, what does that mirror in you? And how can you? What are those? What Taigen does in his book is he pulls forward embodiments in this day and time that might be an embodiment of Shakyamuni Buddha, that we could see that as an encouragement, or Maitreya or Avalokiteshvara, but also what are those qualities in you? Because they're all in all of us. They're all psychological, spiritual states, as well as, the artists and spiritual seekers couldn't envision them outside if they weren't inside. And that's part of what Tibetans do beautiful visualization practices with all those big tonkas, like there's a Tara there, but I only did a little bit of it because I wasn't very good at it, but some people get very, but as I understand it, is you really enter the image in really deep detail. So it's a concentration practice. And then at a certain point, it enters you and you completely become it. And then, of course, the more you do that kind of practice, it's the Sambhogakaya body of Bodhisattvas are everywhere. Buddhas are everywhere. Shakyamuni Buddha is the historical Buddha, but the Lotus Sutra, that's one of the amazing things about the Lotus Sutra, which I'll be bringing up because Lotus Sutra has lots of bodhisattvas in it, is everybody just thought in Shakyamuni Buddha's lifetime that there was just one Buddha. But it's like, no, there are Buddhas across time and space, and they've always been here, and they always will be here. And that every little square inch of ground that you're sitting on, there's been a Buddha waking up. And I like to imagine that from the Avatamsaka Sutra, Buddhism is enormously imaginative when you enter these realms. So there's little Buddhas sitting in all of yourselves waking up. And that's, sometimes I think, oh, when I feel that kind of joy, that's kind of sublime, inconceivable joy, it's because all the little Buddhas in my cells, and just like all of a sudden, they just sort of like went, wow. There's joy, there's Buddhas, and of course, they're also helping me in here when we're in places where I can't believe this world. What are we going to do here? So the historical Shakyamuni Buddha was a human being, 6th century, and is often referred to having the characteristics of the lives of all the Buddhas. You want to hear them? Oh, no. Oh, I'm so happy. If you'd said no, I didn't know what we do. Oh, okay. 5 fundamental archetypes. The first one is the story of the Buddha. I think most of you have some sense of the story of the Buddha, is that his father, there was a prediction about Buddha would either be a world leader or a spiritual leader. Father was really wanted him to be a world leader and tried to protect him from becoming a spiritual leader. Like, let's keep this person protected. And as we all know, Buddha went out, saw suffering, and made a choice. But we're all making choices in the same way, moment after moment, all the time. I mean, it's one way to think about it. Are we making a worldly choice, or are we making a worldly choice that is self-oriented, or are we making a choice that's oriented towards alleviating the suffering of the whole world? And sometimes that they'd be completely the same thing, but there's a different intention in it. And I think that's what Zazen practice is. That's what practice is. That's what practice period is. That's why we come together, is to more and more cultivate the intention so that instead of, it's not like I don't make self-centered choices. I imagine you do too. But I get it a little quicker when I can see when I'm doing harm. And I get it a little quicker when my mind states are more contracted around that kind of, I mean, I just know, I know my conditioning. And then take a breath. So what would a choice be? What would be the response that might do no harm or would do less harm? Or that wouldn't cause more harm? Or that I always love the third pure precept is to always act with others in mind. That one to me always feels like bingo. Because I don't always want to act with others in mind. I wouldn't want what I want, you know, but it's like waking up in the midst of it. So the Buddha, so a Buddha in us would, instead of moving from well-meaning but self-centered intentions, because often they're very well-meaning, would more and more cultivate a concern for all aimed at awakening our hearts, awakening a sense of interconnection and freedom for everybody. Freedom from everybody. I have to feel that way. I'm getting out of here. No, it's freedom with and for everybody. The first one. Okay, second one. Bodhicitta, which is awakening the caring impulse. From a sheltered knowing home, a known home, the sheltering of, I just want to stay in my own home where I know where everything is and everything's in control, to, I don't know how to do this or what it is, but I want my home to be the whole world. And what would that be? And what would that look like? So from shelter and comfort to not turning away. But we'll see, that doesn't mean being miserable. So Buddha left home. That's the story. Home leader. We don't leave home. We're all lay people. But leaving the home of conditioned patterns and mental habits, awakening into the unknown of practice and an ever-opening heart and mind, leaving home to come home to an awakened heart and to our original inalienable true nature, not separate from all beings. When you do the Bodhisattva vows, when you take the ceremony, when you do the formal Jukai, part of I love the phrase, one of the phrases says, you are now a child of the Buddha. I love that. I always feel that. I always feel that way when I sit zazen, of like, there's this confused, suffering, conditioned, wanting what I want, self-being, and I just set her, him, her, they down in the lap of the Buddha. That to me is what zazen feels like. Like, oh, I just come home. And finally, for a few moments, this one in me can just feel, oh, I'm a child of the Buddha, and I'm held, and I'm breathing and being breathed. There's something bigger that knows my deepest heart and intention. Four. The story of Shakyamuni Buddha, as you probably know, is that when Shakyamuni Buddha left home, he went out and followed the way of the ascetics of his time, which was very strenuous, hard practice. And there are pictures of the Buddha, actually, quickly open to it. have a Tonga at home. They were kind of, see if it just immediately, a Buddha starving. Have you ever seen one of those? The skeleton body, just, it's like he almost died. That's what he did. Oh, here, he's emaciated. I don't know if you probably can't see him. You probably can't see that. Maybe you can see him. Because that's what everybody told you should do back then. It's like, well, and I suppose in a certain way, some part of us thinks culturally, we were just be hard on yourself, like stay on yourself, man. You know, it's like, don't let yourself get away with it. It's like how you taught, we probably do it less with food in our Western culture and more from lack of nourishing and being kind to ourselves. Somehow that's going to make us be better people. And the beautiful story about the Buddha is that he was close to starving, and a milkmaid. So the feminine, I love it that the feminine and that it's milk, gave him rice pudding, milk. And that was how the Buddha got the strength to then set the resolve to sit down on the earth under the Bodhi tree with and for all beings. And milk, almond milk, soy milk, garbanzo milk, whatever the milk of the day is but just is this practice is a practice of nourishment. The practice of, it's like, how can we be kind to ourselves and to all beings? So please find those places in ourselves where we're hard on ourselves and give it some nice warm milk of whatever kind makes you happy. The kindness of just someone coming up and saying, I see you're starving right now. You're being really hard on yourself. Here, can I offer you a kind word? Which is then the middle way. It's not like about asceticism and stridency, but it's also not like about, well, everything's fine and there's nothing to do, because the Buddha knows there's something that, I mean, how can I just sit around and do nothing because there's suffering in the world? But how we do this, that's the middle way, which is just like put your feet on the ground. Just one step after another. Besides the Naga as earth practice, in the very beginning, there weren't statues of Buddha. Buddha wasn't depicted as a human being. One of the first well, it was the wheel, turning the wheel of Dharma, of waking up, but the footprint of the Buddha, which I think is so beautiful. That was one of the first images. The Buddha was just a footprint on the earth. That's it. That's it. And the story of Buddha's awakening. Bruce and I did a Buddhist pilgrimage and went to Bodh Gaya and saw the Bodhi tree, sat under the Bodhi tree. I mean, it's one of the children of the Bodhi. I mean, it's not the same tree, but it's said to be in the same place, and the temple is there. And there are Buddhists from all over the world there. It's so cool because everybody has on different robes, colored robes, and they're all doing different practices, but they're all just there under this, sitting around the Bodhi tree, just chanting, waking up. Some of them, something like old people from Tibet who've done amazing pilgrimages, just to be there and to say, I too want to sit here under this Bodhi tree upright, vowing not to move until I understand and penetrate in my own heart, body, mind, and with the whole world how to end suffering. I always like Buddha, the 12-fold cause of 12-fold causes. I don't like it that much because I can't remember it. The 12-fold chain of causation of this leads to that, and that leads to this, and without this, there's no that. It's like any place in this chain of the initial perception of things as separate, and everything that comes out of that. It's like, come back. Of course you perceive things as separate. You're a human being. We have two eyes. We see in duality, but what we do with it and where we go with it. And the great story about Buddha under the Bodhi tree is Mara. Because Mara is like the little devil, but the little devil's in all of us. And Mara knows exactly how to push Buddha off the cushion. Because Buddha said, I vow to sit here and wake up with everybody. I vow to be a Buddha. And Mara comes and says, so who do you think you are that you could make this vow? So we've got those in us, right? All the time. Like, well, that was a nice thing you did, but who do you think you are that you could keep waking up and become a kinder, more open? Don't you know? So Buddha just kept sitting and sitting. He was unshakable, unmoved. He was aware of the temptations, but intent on meditation and a determination to awaken and dissolve suffering for all. His unshakable resolve is emblematic. His unshakable resolve is emblematic of bodhisattva dedication. That's Taigen. And then the morning star. He sat through the night. And suddenly, out of pure emptiness, the purity of the morning star and form rose. And with it, he woke up and everything woke up. And it was the same world, but a completely different world. I think these stories are really, really important. You think they're children's stories, but if you really sit with and live these stories and take them in, they will teach you everything you need to know about being a Buddha and waking up to be a Buddha. And Buddhist teachings and timeless time teachings is when you wake up, everything wakes up. You have a moment of insight, everything has that moment of insight. So the whole world is waking up as we're waking up. So this isn't just like a self-centered, I'm going to wake up and figure this out for myself. It touches this whole crazy, beautiful world, and it all becomes more vibrant and alive like the morning star. Okay, I have lots of other things to say, but I want to do this instead, or in addition. How much you guys should talk to each other. So we say, I take refuge in Buddha. I mean, it's one of the refuges. Namo Ke Butsu. I love that when you sew one of these things is with each stitch you say Namo Ke Butsu. I plunge into what the translation of it is it's not just mine, but it's my most favorite one. Is I plunge into Buddha, because in general, if you know me, I sort of tend towards the more visceral, physical manifestation of that. It's like each moment, it's like each step is I plunge into Buddha, I plunge into this vow, I plunge into this way of living, I plunge into this path. I take refuge in Buddha, and the Buddha in me, and the Buddha in you. So I thought, why don't I put you guys in groups? I think we could do, maybe